Hello, and welcome to the Ghostcast, the official podcast of the Ghost Lab. The Ghost Lab is an interdisciplinary lab at the College of Arts, Media and Design at Northeastern University. We leverage design, engineering, computer science, and social science to address societal challenges through creative technologies such as games and virtual reality. In the Ghostcast, we discuss hot topics in society and the work we do at Ghost Lab on these topics. We will feature members of our lab, but also bring forth special guests. And while we do that, we like to have a bit of fun together. So in this second episode, we are going to speak of generative AI. With me today are, including myself, our three members of the lab. We have Amir Abdollah.
Yeah.
We have Giovanni Troiano.
Hello, hello.
And myself, Alayt Issak. And we will get into it with today's conversation. So I think it'll be good to start off with a brief bit of introductions.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. This is Amir. I'm final year PhD student of industrial engineering. My research is mostly focused on leveraging gamified experiments to collect rich data, rich behavioral data from the systems and socio-technical systems in different societal levels, micro, meso, and macro. And then so we can use those data to understand the system and then provide context-specific recommendations to the players who are interacting with those environment, with the simulated environment or embedded environment in different social systems. That's mostly what I do.
Awesome. Thank you, Amir. Giovanni.
Sure. My name is Giovanni Troiano. My full name is Giovanni Maria Troiano. My second name is a female name. But so I am from Italy. I'm from the south of Italy, from Naples specifically, which is a beautiful and crazy place at the same time. Yeah, so I was doing a PhD in computer science in Denmark, University of Copenhagen. And it was computer science, but specifically human-centered computing, which is a branch of human-computer interaction, I suppose, which is focused on people more than machines. Let's put it that way. And right now, I am an assistant research professor here at Northeastern on my second year officially, working primarily on game-based learning game-based learning, constructionist learning. And I am entering into the world of artificial intelligence because everybody's jumping on the bandwagon, and so am I. Pretty much what I do these days is I write grant proposals, I write scientific papers.
Well, thanks so much for introducing yourself and your full name. I think I've been inspired by that, and I also introduced myself with my full name. My name is Alayt Abraham Isaac or Issak, and my middle name is my father's name because the way I'm from Ethiopia and you just take your dad's name, your dad takes your dad's name, and it's a patriarchy. But my preferred last name actually is a name I made up myself. I combined my parents' first names. My dad's name is Abraham. My mom's name is Salam. So my preferred last name is Ablam. So a bit about me. Yeah, I joined this program. I'm in the interdisciplinary design and media PhD program at the College of Arts, Media and Design. I joined in the fall of 2022 as the first cohort, so very much launching the program and going at it in a very create your own adventure manner.
It puts a lot of responsibility on you. You have to perform, right? You are the first batch. We're looking forward to people like you being very successful in the program.
Well, I appreciate it. And honestly, there's been a lot of support from the department and the program overall, so it's been a pleasant experience so far. And so, I'm wrapping up my third year. I'm a PhD candidate, so I've already proposed my dissertation. I wear three hats. I am a philosopher, an artist, and an HCI researcher. Mm-hmm. And so my title is a philosopher, an artist, and an HCI researcher, writer dissertation. And so combining all three into one, which is me as one human being, I work on designing ethical human AI co-creative systems for creativity. So my whole motto, my whole the whole goal of my dissertation is to design things specifically for creativity. And yeah, in that regard, I sort of got into different forms of different ontologies, different forms of pedagogies, and understanding how to create the knowledge that I'm doing in an interdisciplinary program. So I do like theory-heavy philosophy. I work on my own creative practice as a visual artist, and then I also do HCI research.
To clarify for people who might not know, the acronym HCI is
Yes.
human-computer interaction, right?
Yes, human-computer interaction. I have the first question, actually, Giovanni started off with, but maybe I'll start off with Amir. How did you find yourself in generative AI research?
I will provide just an example. In micro level social problem I was focused in during my PhD. I was working in a classroom setting. Students and teachers are working together, and they are using gamified experiments like Scratch, which is a low-code programming environment. They are building games in a constructionist learning environment. Not only they are not, that's kind of game-based learning that students are interacting with the games, not only to learn something, but they are creating games themselves to even promote their reasoning skills, their logical understanding as well. At the same time that they are interacting with the gamified environment. And we analyze the outputs of the artifacts they have created to see if they are developing different aspects of computational thinking in their studies or not. And what we did was mostly statistical learning, machine learning, but I'm mostly trying to tweak to Gen AI as well. Mm-hmm. In another study, which we are analyzing the supply chain, for example, we have built a simulated environment for, and we are exposing human players to a supply chain environment. They are managers of the wholesaling, which is a part of the bigger supply chain. And in this environment, we are trying to get some text inputs from player when they are interacting with the environment, then use LLMs to provide them some nudges during the game, and we will analyze that this nudging is impactful or not, and how providing these nudges will change their decision making during the game. And this is how I'm trying to tweak from more previous versions of the AI machine learning to more recent versions, which is LLM.
I see. Yeah. No, thank you so much for sharing, especially starting off from your background and looking at fields of application that you find interesting and fitting to really apply your knowledge towards. And I think just to break it down for our audience, you said there's constructionist learning. So what are the different forms of learning that are out there?
Actually, in game-based learning, we have two avenues, instructionist and constructionist learning. Yeah. In instructionist learning, they are teachers, for example, are as an instructor, and they are maybe giving the games to students so they can play and learn something based on this. In constructionist learning, they are building games themselves. They are building some artifacts, and in the process, they are learning as well.
I see. Giovanni, how about you? How did you get into AI research? You mentioned the bandwagon earlier.
Yeah. So in 2010, I joined a Master in Interactive Media and Cognitive Systems at Universitat Pompeu Fabra in Barcelona. And there was a course, one of the courses that I was taking was about it wasn't really about artificial intelligence. It was more about, what do you call them? Neural networks, right? Like replicating neural networks with machines. It was like something in intelligent systems, I think it was called. The teacher who was teaching the course, Ulysses Bernadette, I don't even know where the guy works right now.
You can give him a shout out.
Yeah, I'm giving a shout out to Ulysses. He's great. He's a great guy. And that he was able to stand me. I was asking him so many questions. At some point, he looked at me and he said, "Okay, what do you want from me? Actually, okay, like I'm not like an encyclopedia. You cannot ask me everything, and expect me to have every answer to every question you asked, but I did have a lot of questions about. I was really fascinated because I had no idea about artificial intelligence, like robots and stuff like that. But the reason why I became interested in the concept of artificial intelligence in the first place, it was because I was thinking, I disagree with the notion of artificial intelligence because we're trying to replicate our brain, presuming that we're always intelligent, but we're not.
I see.
Like oftentimes we're very stupid. We're not really intelligent. Like we will engage with the same pattern of behaviors stubbornly over and over again, even at our detriment. So I was like, I don't know if we should talk about artificial intelligence, like that. That sounds too presumptuous, And then I engaged with a group of master students in a project which was called Designing for Artificial Stupidity.
Oh, that's interesting.
So we made, that was a crazy project. We made, there were these little robots in 2010 that were very popular to teach about, pattern recognition to students. EPUC, I think they were called. And so you would take one of these small round robots and teach them how to avoid collision, basically. It's like one of the most basic algorithms you can implement in a robot. And so we did teach the robot to avoid collision, but we also implemented a random algorithm in the robot that it would randomly decide not to avoid collision, even though it had learned previously to avoid collision, to replicate stupidity, quote unquote. It was a fun project, we were just having fun. And that's how I got interested in artificial intelligence. Now, generative AI, I think for the sake of, context, we should provide a little bit of, like a background for people who are listening to the podcast. They might not know the difference between, or they might presume that AI and generative AI, they are one and the same, which to a large extent they are, but not exactly the same. Because, and Amir, you can always feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm going to oversimplify, people who are experts in AI. I don't want them to jump on me because I know that I'm going to say things that might not be fully technically correct. But as far as I understand,
Not at all. Please continue.
you have foundational models,
Yes.
right? And foundational models, they encompass models like large language models, like GPT, for example. And so these models, they are based on machine learning algorithms. But one way that helps me understand the difference between, like machine learning and generative AI, if we want, I think it's useful to make that distinction, is that, for example, machine learning is used in cybersecurity because machine learning is a proficient algorithm at identifying outliers. As far as I understand, machine learning is a way to learn for the machine to learn about patterns, right? To identify patterns. Now, it can be supervised, it can be self-supervised or unsupervised, which for the most part, I think deep learning is unsupervised, as far as I understand. So machine learning is really good at finding these outliers, but it's not really used to generate content, right? And I think that's where generative AI becomes interesting because you use unsupervised algorithms for the most part, like deep learning algorithms, to learn about patterns, bring them back into this latent space, which is sort of like it could compare to the hypothalamus, hippocampus, and amygdala we have in the temporal lobe, right? And it's processing information from the data set that it has been trained on. It abstracts the rules, I suppose, and then it provides an output. The next time is encountering new information that tries to be coherent and consistent with the query.
Yeah.
That's, I don't know, Amir, am I correct?
Overall, yeah, in a simplified way.
I said I'm oversimplifying because so I think that's how we get to generative AI. The generative AI is interesting because it's sort of like a quantum leap in machine learning and AI design. I think broadly speaking, it gives the ability to generate, like for example, if you think about large language models, they predict their token prediction machine based on the input. They can predict to generate not just one simple response to a query, but an entire, like a essay. Mm-hmm. So that's, exponentially much more refined than, what algorithms were capable of doing, let's say, 10, 15 years ago.
So is that sort of what drew you to Gen AI from your interest in AI?
Yeah, so what is interesting to me about generative AI is the possibility that they, is the fact that they give, unprecedented possibilities to help with creative work, for example. Mm-hmm. Because, I myself, I used to draw comics.
You had background in the fine arts, you said.
Yeah, correct. So I used to draw comics, but now I don't have the time to do that anymore. So what I'm doing is I am outsourcing to the AI whenever I want to draw, I want to rapidly generate an idea for a comic that I have, but I don't have time to make drawings. I outsource to the AI because I can just provide prompts and say, can you make something similar to The Walking Dead? Whatever. And
how about the process?
Okay, so strictly speaking about my, because you asked,
that creative process.
In drawing, that's a complicated
process.
Process.
That's first of all,
you have to learn how talking about, constructionist education.
How to make drawings,
what I work with. And for example,
depends on
what is it that you're attempting to draw.
Up until
now, if you want to draw human beings, you have to learn how projects in scratch with block-based programming, beings, like the human body, or maybe they were time and practice. Like somebody, like a teacher, was showing them how to do it. Then after a while, they become independent. So, for example, usually the pipeline is you learn to draw shapes
from scratch.
Once you have
that teaches you computational
whatever, you have a degree of computational. Stefania Druga, for example, you have to learn how to draw in perspective. Exactly what it does, right? So the Copilot, you have to use all those tools and instruments like do block-based programming by providing with hints. Sometimes
and then you learn how to do all of that
method where instead of giving you an answer to a query,
and then you can start to draw with the pencil, and then you have to draw how
that makes you reflect. Learn how, which is kind of a nudging agent, but nudging is a bit more strategic, whereas reflective. So nudging is not always prompted by another layer of complexity.
And then you have to learn, if you want to do it in color, you have to learn how to color.
AI like Cognimate
now you can
scratch.
Do it with Photoshop, but you have to learn how to use Photoshop.
It's not a nudging.
So
it
takes a lot of time.
And if you want to do something like you have an intelligent tutor, you have to learn how to helps you scaffold the learning to have a sense of narrative, for example. You have to sit down and write this. So you co-create projects with AI and artificial intelligence. Boom. And that is going to just use prompting and shift and change the landscape of education in constructionist learning, because for the most part up until now it's been a self-supervised, students supervising their own creative process. Now they have an AI companion
that's allowing them to reflect.
It allows them to reflect or to take shortcuts depending on how they engage with the AI.
Shortcuts for better or for worse?
We don't know. That's the interesting question with AI based learning. We don't know yet.
Yeah.
But we know something. We know that, for example, low-income students that, come from low-income families and have less socioeconomic opportunities, statistically speaking, they tend to engage with AI more as a shortcut to knowledge than students who are more at an advantage. So this is a real risk to exacerbate inequities in education, But, we don't need to get into that right now.
No, that's a very interesting perspective that you're sharing. I'll wear a different hat and speak about my background, how I got into AI. But I also come from more of a science, computational background like Amir. My background was in mathematics and of trying to figure out what to do with math. Math and CS are in the same building. So started taking some CS classes.
CS as in computer science.
Okay. Yes. Math and computer science are in the same building. And so I started taking some computer science classes. Before you know it, data science. And I was like, oh, interesting, ML, machine learning. Oh, interesting, AI. And so that's sort of how I was exposed to it. And I think initially just machine learning, at least for me, just, it sort of like made sense in a sense, in a format where using data that you have to sort of predict outcomes of what can happen in the future. So it's sort of like forecasting, but making informed and smart decisions. That's sort of what really allowed me to understand what data science and ML can really do. But then I still wanted to combine the arts with my math and CS background. So I did like a senior thesis my senior year titled Visualizing Concepts. And what I really wanted to understand was how can you visualize a concept how can you understand a concept in a visual format? So think of the concept of philosophy, like what is that in like a visual format? And so that sort of translation is what I was interested in. And then through that, I met a researcher at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign, a professor, joined his lab there. And then that was when I was exposed to generative AI, and particularly like generative AI within the arts and creativity. Because I had distinct creative practice and like math approaches and backgrounds, when I was exposed to prompt programming, it just didn't make sense to me at all. I think that when I was asking you earlier about the difference between process and product of just like writing something, allowing that to be artistic end goal, wasn't something I could comprehend, just to say the least. And so I wrote a paper about it, arguing for artistic autonomy in AI art. And that sort of like launched the research that I'm doing here at Northeastern. That's what I continue of trying to understand creative expression through new technologies and the human values embedded in that. So coming back at you with a question that I think would be interesting is, well, we have AI, Gen AI in all different fields. It's a general purpose technology. And there, I was reading a New York Times article recently that speaks of how it's really been disrupting many industries, such as CS education to begin with. And so one of the things that's being said there is that, you know, CS education, right now it's more skill-based. So you go in, you learn how to code, and you leave and you have the skill with you. It's transitioning to more of computational thinking. So it's just interesting what you have to say about there of like even changes in what we view as what education is and the forms of knowledge that we're learning.
That's a very good and very complicated question. I want to piggyback on something that Amir said about reasoning. You brought reasoning into the discourse of AI. I think we were both, Amir and I, we were at it was a lecture from a guy called Ron Bruckman. And the guy was talking about common sense more than reasoning. The problem with generative AI, like GPT, large language models, is that they don't have common sense.
Okay.
And that is a pernicious problem that it stems from another problem, which is the problem of symbol grounding. And what is symbol grounding? Okay. The ability that we have to ground symbols in our semantic understanding of the world, which is to say, how do we know that, and why do we know that red means red? Okay, so it's kind of a very abstract question. Now, if you go to the literature of semiotics, like Umberto Eco, this Italian guy, he was dealing exactly with the meaning of words and the meaning of things. Okay, so apparently, as far as I understand from the work of Ron Bruckman, the problem with AI is that AI can handle syntax, which means it can handle information, but it doesn't really understand what it's doing because machines don't really understand anything. And now, this is a problem that another guy was navigating, John Searle, that John Searle was artificial intelligence. In the 90s, he was objecting the lack of common sense. The guy was saying stems from this Turing problem that machines have of not being able to understand a test for intelligence. Disambiguate the context.
Because they're not embedded in
a person in a room. That the experiment of John Searle was called the Chinese reason, room. But I put a person in a room, I mean, and I give that person two vocabularies that I think explain intelligence to and robotics, they're coming together, how to translate artificial general intelligence to Chinese, AGI, and vice versa. I think that's, and then the next, all that person has to do is to
the North
take
Star,
input, the North Star of artificial intelligence, the appropriate translation and provide a coherent output. That level. Is that really intelligence, or is that just mechanical translation from one system? I don't know if we will ever have it to another. Which is able to have that syntactic. We would have to have machines that are that have an embodied understanding of the world. But again, understanding, right? So it's we don't even know if machines understand.
Yeah, there's the paper, I think it's called the Gen AI paradox.
Yeah.
It says what it can create, it does not understand.
Yeah, for example, Apple recently published a paper, it's called The Illusion of Thinking, where they completely debunk these reasoning models that, for example, Sam Altman and generative AI people are saying, oh, they're going to take over jobs, they can already rival your PhD. Okay, well, not really. They can't even solve like a Hanoi Tower type of logical puzzle if it gets more complex than, I think, 3 pieces at the time. Like they completely break down these models. And so that's a brilliant paper. Like everybody is in the generative AI endeavor, they're like not happy about that paper because it's sort of they were using mathematical tests as a benchmark for AI reasoning.
I see.
And these people are like, yeah, you can't really do that. You need to use logical puzzle problem solving to really test their reasoning, and they break down. So that's a problem.
And maybe Amir, you can speak a little bit about this too. About I think Gen AI may be allowing us to expose and understand computational thinking as a way in which human beings can assess and address that in education. Because both of you work in this, I'm just wondering maybe what do you see in computational thinking as a field of research that you're honing in on, Amir, for your dissertation?
Sure. And your main question about how the paradigms are changing in CS education, for example, you brought it very correctly. I think those computational thinking is getting more important than coding itself because, you can use prompts. These new LLM models will help you to even your coding a lot of tasks. They are getting better and better in this kind of tasks. But at the end of the day, humans are better in transferable knowledge, in common sense, a lot of things that maybe AI lacks. But I want to have some comment on what Giovanni mentioned as well. For example, Sholay mentioned Sholay provided the ARC benchmark, which maybe 2 years ago, these LLM models were very terrible at it. But recently, they got much better, especially with the presence of DeepSeek, for example, new techniques, how you can improve their reasoning models. They are getting much better. They are even cracking those kind of reasoning tasks as well. But now the problem is becoming more the cost of doing those kind of tasks, because humans are able of, even in the current state, humans are very better than AI in transferable knowledge from one domain to other domain, building very strong connections. But machines are doing those kind of even reasoning tasks, but with very high costs. For example, even the best performers for a task is being done by human, by average human, for example, for less than $1 for a couple of cents. You need to spend a lot of computation, for example, maybe more than $1,000 for doing the same task. Yeah. This is one aspect. And in terms of the AGI and the definition is ambiguous. Even there's a terminology like they say AI effect, and the definition is that, for example, 10 years ago, your understanding of AGI was different than what we have here. You reach this is kind of somehow floating goal. You are achieving a goal. You are going towards a goal. You are reaching new milestones, for example, and you're realizing that even there are more problems to tackle, and that's not you haven't reached AGI. And I don't know what can be the definition of AGI these days, and what researchers and practitioners trying to do. Definitely, if they will even crack those tasks, understanding, they will come with more complex scenarios as well. They will try to crack those as well. Yeah.
No, but Amir has a really good point. Actually, being able to transfer, from one domain to another, that's hot topic right now with respect to what AI can do. Yeah, I was basically trying to say that, like Amir pointed out, there are certain tasks that humans are still better at doing than machines, which for the most part is about, reasoning, high-level reasoning, and using common sense.
So is that something you apply when you're writing your grants and doing your research, of saying, like, these are the areas in which I think AI has, the spotlight in terms of, like, they're good at these certain aspects, and so you're incorporating them into the workflow or into the research pipeline that you're making, for example, for Scratch, when you said you want the AI to be more of like a Socratic reflector, you're using AI in a form where you're empowering the student, the human being. And so is that an approach in which AI can be used that you find promising in the line of research that you're pursuing?
The question you initially asked, right, was how does it AI change the landscape of computer science, and where does computational thinking in that picture, where does it fit in that picture? Is it maybe for students nowadays and in the future, will it be more important to develop higher order thinking level skills in terms of computing, right? That's reasonably what, you would expect to happen, right? Which is, I tell the machine what to do when the machine does it, sort of thing. Because I am thinking at the high level and the machine is doing the low level stuff. There's a problem with that, which is how can you tell the machine to do things that are high level if you yourself don't understand in the first place, you don't have that knowledge. You don't happen to think at the high level if you have not engaged with the low level first, it's a problem. And the problem is relating to over-reliance on AI, which is an issue that I have delved into recently. It's part of the book chapter that I have been writing.
Please speak more about that.
So that's really the issue at hand here, I think. So we have a lot of interesting issues, but one is what can humans do that machines cannot do now or maybe, 20 years down the line. And I think Amir is right, being able to transfer knowledge and skills from one domain to another, humans are still better. We're still better at reasoning and common sense because we are embedded and embodied in the real world at all levels. So the idea that this table is intelligent as much as we are intelligent because it affords what we can do as much as we can afford the way in which we use it. So everything is intelligent in that respect. To reach potentially that level of, intelligence and cognition, machines would have to be embodied and embedded in the world. Not just large language models, but should physically participate. So maybe robotics and AI together, is going to bring AI to the next level of intelligence. I don't know if you want to call it that. But still, going back to computational thinking and computer science, I think computational thinking is definitely going to be a critical skill no matter what. The way Seymour Papert was defining computational thinking, Seymour Papert is the father of constructionist learning, was based on the notion of powerful ideas. So the idea is that computational thinking is a skill that allows you to change perspective on yourself and the world. It's not just about computing.
So can you talk about computational for systematic thinking?
Papert and Jeanette Wing and other people after them, they talk about computational thinking because we live in the age of computing. Computers are everywhere. So you have to be able to think in terms of machines and computers. There's no escape. But it transcends the idea of working with computers because it's about problem solving. It's about understanding the world from your personal epistemological point of view. So computational thinking is a set of skills that it's not just about coding. It's also about analytical thinking. It's about understand processes. But you cannot teach computers how to code if you don't know how to code yourself.
Yeah.
So that will be necessarily a skill that we will have to develop no matter what. And then maybe at some point you understand and you know how to code very well and you don't need to do it anymore and you outsource to artificial intelligence. But you cannot outsource from the get-go because if you do not have the knowledge and, if you don't have the know-how, then what is it that you're outsourcing to them? Like you're mindlessly prompting to a machine, and then, okay, what's going to happen to our mental skills, right?
Yeah, similar to implementing code that you don't know what it's about and you're just doing that. A speculative question for you, because I think this is interesting. Would you think computational thinking can be like a degree that you can get, like a master's in computational thinking?
It should be. Right now, it doesn't contemplate artificial intelligence literacy, but it will have to contemplate that for sure. Also, we work with metrics, right? Computational thinking metrics, which are automatically scoring the way in which, like you're proficient in computational thinking.
What are the different things in the metrics?
You have different dimensions like, how proficient are you at abstracting a problem by performing problem decomposition, which is, the way I explain it is you want to make a cake, right? And then what ingredients do you need? Where do you start from? Because a cake is something abstract. So you need flour, you need sugar, you need eggs, yada, yada, yada. And so that you decompose a problem into manageable steps, and then you manage those steps to find the solution to a problem. So that's problem decomposition and abstraction. That's one of the dimensions of computational thinking. Then you have logical thinking. If I do this, then something happens, or else something else will happen. That's also part of computational thinking. So it's a set of skills that can be metaphor of what we do with computers. But I think it cannot be devoid of AI literacy at this point because, again, more and more students are going to use AI to learn how to code and to think in terms of computing. So it doesn't make sense, for example, to score students on their computational thinking alone anymore because it's not just them. It's them and AI. So we're going to have to find a way to, assess both.
Yeah. No, that's a very fair point. Amir, you are in your 5th year of your research. Congrats on making it so far. It's been 5 years, so you have a letter per year, DOCTO, one more year, doctor. The question I have for you, what is the contribution of your research? So the big picture of your thesis, what are you putting forth and walking away with when you graduate?
Actually, as I mentioned earlier, I'm trying to build more context-aware AI-based recommendations in different social systems, micro, meso,
and that
macro.
framework comes from social work, right?
Yes, it's a combination, comes from different disciplines. Yeah.
I guess I can talk a little bit about the way we approach and utilize AI in our creative disciplines, since I work in creativity, is something that I'm actively working on, especially because it seems like when AI came out, some disciplines embraced it more than others. In creativity, it was sort of, especially when Gen AI came out, it's being trained on data sets of artists' work. The 3 things that artists ask for, at least for a paper that's been formalized recently at CHI, as I mentioned earlier, the conference for HCI, is consent, compensation, and credit. And those are things, I guess, artists are trying to come out now. There has also been a bit of a bifurcation with the artist community in terms of artists who embrace AI, so AI artists, and those who are, more on the critical aspects side of it.
Oh, by the way, just to interject, there's a beautiful book that gives perspective on specifically this dichotomy of people who are more, for AI, which is saying, for technology, and people who are more against technology. It's called Apocalypse Postponed. I think we talked about this book already. By Umberto Eco, by the way, that I mentioned.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so that's a brilliant book that I think, you should read, and also the listeners, they should give it a try.
Yeah.
It's tapping exactly into this issue of people who are completely opposed to a novel technology and people that embrace it, and what are the implications of that. And I think it can still inform the discussion that we're having, about generative AI and AI today, because like you're saying, there's that division, with respect to AI as well. You have people who are like, yeah, sure, we should do it, we should use it, and people are like, nah, not a chance. This is ruining humanity.
Yeah, so I'm sort of approaching my research saying, well, the horse is out of the barn, AI is here, what do we do about it? And co-creation is an approach that I'm trying to go about in terms of saying, how can you have AI systems that enhance human creativity, similar to earlier on when you're having the reflection aspect, helping students there. But with co-creation, it's also interesting because the idea is that you create creative artifacts that would surpass what either would do independently. So it's almost like this synergy between how an AI can help enhance you and what the human being creates. And in many ways, we've all been subject to technology, right? So they say you as a human being can see a certain way, but when you wear glasses are a piece of technology in themselves. So there's sort of this cyborg element to it. Another one is like when you are looking for things online before you'd go to the library, now you have Google search. And so in that sense, that's also a bit of an augmentation that we see in terms of how human being intelligence has really been able to expedite and elements of the sort. So that's sort of, I mean, it's still very hypothetical, it's still abstract, but that's sort of the idea of like entertaining, I guess, as what I'm doing right now, like this idea of co-creation and seeing what's possible there while still being fully aware of the exploitation of creative labor that's happening within AI systems that look at, that work in creativity and also understanding how the wants, feels, and wants of the artist community. We're wrapping up a little bit now, but I just wanted to piggyback on the idea that you brought forward, book recommendations for our listeners. So Giovanni, you mentioned
Apocalypse
Postponed.
Umberto Eco.
Okay, excellent. I wanted to bring up a book called Machine Agency by James Mattingly and Beba Sibrlik, if I'm pronouncing the names correctly. Came out in 2025, and it's really interesting because it's basically a philosophy book of the way we're trying to approach AI in creative practice. Amir, do you have any book recommendations?
Actually, I don't remember the name of the guy you mentioned, but he has who is working on common sense on AI.
Oh, Ron Brockman.
Yeah, Ron Brockman. Yeah, I remember. He has a very good book explaining this common sense, and also there's Sutton, which is somehow the father of reinforcement learning. He's explaining the bidder lesson, and he has several books, several articles. He is discussing this bidder lesson, and in a very simplistic way is that we are trying to, AI is becoming more and more capable in doing different tasks, and researchers are trying to come up with powerful models, powerful frameworks. But at the end of the day, a bit later, if you focus on computing aspect and the reasoning part, the history has been proven that after a bit, some more capable models which are focusing on the very basic aspects of intelligence. Some of them are similar to human reasoning, some of them not. They are beating the previous models, which are trying only to learn something, for example, only leverage data or other things. But if you focus on the basic principles and try to leverage those, at the end of the day, those kind of models, those kind of algorithms will be more capable and will be more intelligent.
Interesting.
Yeah, I have a few more recommendations,
Me too.
For artificial intelligence specifically. So obviously Co-Intelligence by Ethan Mollick.
Yeah.
It's maybe overly positivistic.
Okay.
Not always, but it gives, first of all, a nice overview of the history of artificial intelligence beyond computers and beyond what people are usually, what they usually expect the history of AI to be. For example, I was surprised to learn that Mechanical Turk is one primordial example of artificial intelligence, essentially. I mean, it was a Wizard of Oz type of, it wasn't really a computer, but it was essentially a human simulating a computer being intelligently playing the game of chess. And so that's a good book. Then there is The Atlas of AI by Katie Crawford, I think.
Kate Crawford?
Yeah, Kate Crawford. And then a very intriguing and much more dystopian, right?
Yes, all
view on
perspectives.
artificial intelligence is Nexus by Yuval Noah Harari. And then there's
That's a
very
sentence
interesting,
that really
for example,
struck
there's
me.
a couple of
About artificial
couple of concepts
intelligence. Maybe
that the guy
it's
brings up that are
overly
very
interesting.
negative.
The bot prison.
I don't know. But he
if
says
you know about this.
artificial intelligence
a
is what the
brilliant,
Stalins of the world
reflection.
were waiting for.
And
because
see.
he is pretty common sense. He thinks that artificial
imagine that you are
intelligence
a
is bound
totalitarian
up
state.
with the
and
notion and
you have
the ability
a person
of
speaking against
oligarchs
the
of
totalitarian
society to
state.
take control of
Now you
AI
can
to make
torture
society
that person,
always more
you can
totalitarian
imprison,
and autocratic
you can,
and like
dictatorial.
end
Which
their
is
lives.
very, I
But
mean,
you
it's
can
a very
do that
dark take to an artificial
but
intelligence
it's a brilliant.
How do you
read.
imprison
Yeah,
AI?
there's 3 books: Co-Intelligence,
Can
Atlas
you,
of AI,
you know,
and
like
Nexus.
torture a bot?
Yeah, I
You
think
can't
something
really do
that came
that.
up to me when
It's
you
an
mentioned this on
inanimate.
Nexus
Well,
right
it's
now. There's a really
animate,
good
but
paper
it's
that
not
came
a
out,
living, as in. Well,
recently
it
called
doesn't have
Foundation
physical. Right? You
Models
can
as
hurt
Agents of
an
Austerity.
algorithm.
It's at the
So
International
it's a very
Conference on
interesting
Computational
idea
Creativity meant to
that
be
he proposes.
quite provocative, which it is. So that's one I would add on to there. And then a book recommendation I wanted to add that sort of combines generative AI, arts, and visual media is called Artificial Aesthetics by Lev Manovich and Emmanuel Ariely.
Oh, great. Yeah, Lev Manovich.
Yeah, and it's open access, available online, so that's something you can find. Before we wrap up, I just have one question that I can ask all of us. How has your life changed, been impacted, or just, been, how has your life been since AI?
So you mean generative AI, right? Because AI has been around for a while.
Yeah, AI has been, yeah.
I mean, interesting, I would say.
Okay.
Definitely interesting. Both lazy and so it provides, in my experience, space for laziness.
Okay.
And I will elaborate on that in a second. And also space for optimizing work tasks. So what I mean by that is, as a a companion to
I'm
rapidly
very happy to
generate
welcome
ideas,
AI in my
to
workflow
reshuffle
because
content
it
that I
does
have
help,
created previously. For example,
I don't use
if
it
I
to
want
find
to
references.
create a
There's
rapid
a
draft
paper
that demonstrated
of,
that it
I don't know,
fabricates
like an idea that I have
around
for a
70%
grant proposal
or a paper.
of the
Or if I
references
have
Yeah.
that it gives to. So
let's say
I wouldn't play with that.
something that I
It
have
can be
written
very
in a
dangerous.
paper that has been published
And
already,
lazy
and I want
because
to have
if
a
you
rapid
over-rely, and this is really a problem,
let's
maybe
say
we can delve
rewriting
much deeper
into the problem of
a
over-reliance
section
in
that
another
I know I'm going to
Ghostcast.
write in the
Yeah,
next
bonus
paper.
episode.
I'm going to talk about
So
the same
that
thing, but I need to modify the
I have
language.
seen
and
I
I
have
want to
experienced
rapidly
firsthand how it can
repurpose the same
degenerate
content
and
in a
escalate
different form.
rapidly. So
Amir, what
AI
about you?
allows me to do all of that pretty effectively.
Mostly for me, I'm using AI as a companion as well. For example, for brainstorming, coming up with some ideas, but it was terrible in coding. Yeah, I haven't used it recently for coding, but it was getting better and better. For complex tasks, I remember that if you give it very complex coding task, even they weren't very capable, but you can hear the news these days. OpenAI, other cloud are releasing new versions every day. They are becoming more proficient, even coding as well. But you need to be careful. You need to not over rely.
Yeah, well, that's a great take. Thanks for sharing, Amir.
What about you, Alayt?
Yeah, I would say I think it's been nice to learn new things with explanations. That's something that I've enjoyed as part of the process. And then another thing is in terms of asking questions and trying to figure out certain thought processes, like if I'm unsure about something. On the other hand, I think you talked about laziness. I wonder because I interact with it in interest, in ways as such. And I wonder over time if it would create a sense of social isolation without you recognizing it, right? So instead of, say you're at a cafe and you want to ask, and you say, you're going to the cashier and then you want to ask, oh, do you have this or so on the menu? But then you can be sitting on your phone just asking that really quick. And so some formats of human interaction will be strayed over time. Or if you're asking questions like this to GPT as opposed to a human being, right? And I feel like some forms of social relationships will be strained. So that's just something I'm trying to be curious about, of even when I'm invoking, ChatGPT or any AI system for any questions.
Yeah, actually, just to, but we talked about over-reliance a lot.
Yeah.
But there's actually an even worse problem with generative AI. It's addiction. There's a paper from 2025. It's a letter to the editor, actually. The authors are all called Kooli, Kooli. They make a case for, it's actually worse than you think. It's not just over-reliance, not just dependence, it's actual addiction. Because they studied the behavioral pattern of people that become addicted from AI, and they found similar behavioral pattern with addiction in other contexts, like, for example, gambling and stuff like that. Also for social interaction.
Yeah,
and so that can lead
exactly.
to solitude and,
Exactly. Yeah, those were, I think, really good closing words in terms of being aware of addiction, social interaction, and over-reliance. Amir, I think you really talked a lot about it being good for certain things and not for others.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, context matters. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think humans can leverage AI, and if we can optimize for human AI collaboration, human AI interaction, we will be better off.
Let us see how we can do it. And that is up from the Ghostcast episode 2. Thank you all for tuning in.
Thank you.
I think we'll have comments and whatever platform we'll release it on. It'll be really good to interact with all the listeners that will be, that will listen to this. So thank you all for being here, Giovanni and Amir. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, thank you for being a great host, Alayt.
Appreciate it.